Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Rocket Pod. So for today's episode we are joined by Sharon Davies, who is the CEO of Young Enterprise. And what Young Enterprise is, it's a national charity that gives young people the life skills, the knowledge and the confidence they need to succeed in the changing kind of world of work. And I personally took part in this scheme when I was in secondary school, so I'd be interested to find out a bit more about the motivation behind Young Enterprise and really delve into the conversation with Sharon. So it's time to get this going. Good morning, Sharon. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well indeed, Harry. How are you?
Yes, I'm all good. So, Sharon, thank you again for joining us this morning. Could we just start off by trying something a little bit different? So what I want to do is ask you if you could share a few maybe tips that you've learned throughout your journey so far that maybe we can share with our audience so then they can start thinking about them throughout your episode.
Yeah, okay. That's an interesting question. I think for me, I look for the opportunity in every situation. I think that listening is key to understanding most problems. I think that relationships are key to solving most problems. I think kindness is a really underrated quality in anybody. And I think that in most cases, a bag of Doritos can help any situation.
So going back to growing up, what were you like as a child? Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so very rural upbringing. I was brought up in Cheshire, very rural upbringing. My mum and dad were tenants on the Duke of Westminster's estate. My mum didn't work; she looked after the kids. My dad was a tree fella. Great memories of being very young, kind of disappearing for the day with my brother, fishing. So very, very, very adventurous. Did really well at primary school. Really small primary school, probably kind of under 50 in the primary school, really nurtured, but then went to secondary school, which was in the nearest town, and really struggled to make that transition. Bullied quite a lot for not kind of having, I guess, the same kind of clothes or the in clothes, those kind of things. Ended up being a bit of a joker to fit in. Worked from a really early age, so liked having money in my pocket. So worked from about 13 onwards in a turkey farm, which was interesting. So yeah, a bit of a mixed bag in terms of that sense of childhood. Left home quite early, left home 16, 17. But yeah, very, very early childhood, great memories of quite an adventurous kind of rural upbringing. And I guess secondary school didn't go so well.
Interesting. So the turkey farm, tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, what's there to tell? It was a turkey farm, and the end of the year was usually the end of the turkeys, which was it was hard work. It was really, really hard work, but you learn. One of the things that I did learn was the importance of teamwork, really, because there was obviously a process to how you work in a turkey farm, particularly at Christmas. It's very, very busy. And you've got lots of people that you don't necessarily know. They're brought. I mean, I worked there on a Saturday every day, so feeding the turkeys and all of mucking them out, all of those things. But then at Christmas, they would kind of bring a lot of people in to like do the plucking of the turkeys, essentially, and you wouldn't know them. And so like 13, 14, with all these kind of adults around that you don't really know, and they're kind of brought in to do. And these would be professional pluckers, so they would be like, they get paid per bird. So they would like be pretty focused, and you're seen as this kid, but the kid actually knows quite a lot about the farm because the kid spent the year on the farm and knows quite a lot about it. So I understood. I learned at quite an early age the importance of kind of communication and teamwork and all of those things. And it taught me a lot. And that work ethic, I think, has always stayed with me. The importance of whatever it is you do in life, of doing your best and of really trying your best has stayed with me throughout. And I've had many jobs has stayed with me throughout, really.
Fantastic. So you mentioned that secondary school didn't go too well. Do you think it was the experience at the turkey farm or your experience at secondary school that made the biggest impact on your trajectory, or was it a combination of both?
I mean, the trajectory, hasn't been a kind of smooth one. So I kind of left school and had a number of jobs. I didn't have a plan at all. So I think my big experiences, my big kind of the impact. My father, I mean, somebody's passed away now, but my father was a fantastic role model. He was great. His work ethic. He was a tree feller. He's kind of a one man band, like a sole trader, if you like, the tree feller. I mean, his work ethic was just phenomenal. It was fantastic. So he was a massive impact. Going to work at an early age had a big impact. And school was just something that I basically got through, really. And I'm sure there are lots of people out there for whom school, I know school works really, really well. But it wasn't that I wasn't bright. It was just I just couldn't connect with the learning, and also the experience of being in school felt like a bit like a gauntlet sometimes. There are other times where it was great because I was a joker and I managed to get through different, in different year groups, different years with different experiences, particularly towards the back end of secondary school, and in like year 11. At a time you should be really focused on doing your exams and stuff. I was more focused on like kind of making people laugh and so it was. I would say secondary school for me wasn't a big defining factor in where I ended up. And I didn't really think about what I was going to do beyond year 11. I just left school and I ended up working with my dad for the summer. So I was kind of out there like helping my dad doing this tree felling in the summer, and then had a series of different jobs over about 2 or 3. I left home, went to live in Chester, then went to live in Manchester, had a series of jobs, came back home for a summer and did some potato picking in a farm, and then left again and went to live in Birkenhead. So I had quite a transient kind of, from 16 to like kind of 19 was quite transient for me. But I learned a lot again. I always worked, always found work, and learned a lot about people. And that learning about people has really stood me in really good stead. For me, relationships and listening are really, really, you can solve most things if you can listen and you can build relationships. I think they're the key. And those jobs really helped me understand that. And the turning point in my life was when I worked in a supermarket, and I met a youth worker, and the youth worker had been informed by somebody on a concession, which is a separate store to the supermarket, about how well I worked with young men that would come into the supermarket who were pretty intent on causing a bit of chaos. And I would basically, if I was on duty, I would try and kind of engage them before they kind of entered into the supermarket and caused a lot of chaos. So it got in the end that when I was on duty, they would come in and we'd have a crack. We'd talk about their bikes or about Liverpool or how Liverpool had done, or all of those things. And basically, this lady introduced this youth worker who was her boss on a part-time basis. She also did some part-time youth work, and said, look, this person here, I think, would do really well. Her skills would be really, really good in a youth work. So he basically invited me to do some voluntary work in a youth club, and I did it. I did it for one night, and I hated it. And then he came back. This guy came back, and I remember him to this day talking to me while I was on a till in a quick save. It was called Quick Save, the supermarket. Saying to me, I know you didn't like it. It didn't work for you. But I've got one more idea that might work for you. And it's basically detached youth work. So it's basically you're on the streets working with young people who choose not to, or there aren't clubs there for them to go to. And you're working with them, kind of helping them, delivering kind of like education on their terms, providing opportunities for them, whether it be outdoor education or five-a-side football on a Friday night, all those things. So I tried that and I loved it. I absolutely fell in love with it and I felt hugely privileged about what I learned. And so from there on, I did voluntary work there for about 6 months alongside the supermarket. I then did some part-time youth work, which I got paid for. And eventually I went to university, John Moores University, got my youth work qualification, and then went on to do youth work on a full-time basis in Merseyside and then latterly in Cumbria. And from there, I was fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to have half funding to do an MBA. And when I did my MBA, it was at that point I thought, actually, I would love to be able to get underneath the bonnet of running a charity, because at that point I was working in a local authority. And I did that, which was whilst I was full-time in work. I did that at the University of Leicester, and then the opportunity to be the operations director in the Northwest for Young Enterprise came up, and that's how I ended up in Young Enterprise.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's really, really inspiring. So actually, there's a couple of things that I observed. So, you learned a lot of your work ethic from your father. Really good hard work, and then he gave you the confidence to. Well, you didn't mind rolling your sleeves up and trying lots of different things, from potato picking to turkey plucking to working in the supermarket to whatever it took to to make ends meet. And then the fact that you left secondary school not knowing what you want to do, I mean, that's kind of most people, really. So I think it's good for our listeners to, for our younger listeners to realize that, not knowing what you want to do is okay. But, like some of the qualities that you mentioned, being able to listen, being kind, having a really good work ethic. These are all these are really good habits to develop. And, other doors open.
So you went from the local authority to the Northwest to now the CEO. How did you adapt? What challenges came with this kind of transition process? And could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it is quite different working for a local authority than working for a charity. First of all, the local authority, your kind of role is pretty well marked out. The boundaries when you work in a local authority, are pretty well marked out. And if your job is as a senior youth worker, your job is a senior youth worker. Whereas if you work in a charity, you could be like the IT technician 1 minute, or kind of sorting out events or fundraising. So it's much more of a kind of you're working in a charity, your role is a lot more fluid, because if you believe in that cause that you've chosen to work for, you'll do anything to make that happen. So for me, it's a vocation. I will always feel indebted to that youth worker that came back not once but twice to say, do you know what? I think you've got something in you that I couldn't see at that time, and certainly no one else had invested in me to the point of saying, do you know what? I think there's something in you. And for me, it's always about, if you can connect opportunities to, that's where you will connect potential. Because this generation that we have now, this current generation, are massively talented, but the opportunities aren't always there for young people across the UK. So for me, that what we do is about connecting talent with opportunity.
I'd like to take this moment to introduce to you our sponsor, Flexi, the must-have app to track and manage your subscriptions in one place. So most of us have multiple subscriptions nowadays for things like streaming services, gym memberships and food deliveries. These are great and take the hassle out of buying everyday products that we consume regularly, but it can be hard to keep track of them. That's where Flexi comes in handy, using super secure technology to connect your accounts to see all your subscriptions in a single dashboard, putting you in control of your spending. And what's more, Flexi's subscription marketplace allows you to discover new products you may love, all easy to pause, resume or cancel in a swipe or two. So give Flexi a try. It's free to download from the App Store, or check out their website at www.flexiapp.uk. That's FLEXY app.uk. Back to the podcast. So you've spoken about opportunities. Now, young enterprise is a huge opportunity, which is actually something that I took part in when I was at school at 15. So would you be able to share with our audience a little bit more about Young Enterprise and a bit about what you do for these young students?
Yeah, so Young Enterprise will be 60 years old in 2023. So it's an organisation that was initially set up to provide financial education, enterprise education, as well as work readiness skills. So what we do is we have a theme of learning by doing. We provide activities for young people to engage in, whether that's been setting up and running their own young enterprise company, which of course Harry, you were involved in, and it's really getting the opportunity to get an experience of the world of work, not work experience, but the experience of the world of work, whether that's the skills that you need, and importantly the mindset that you need. So I talked before about having a work ethic and seeing the opportunities in challenges. One of the things we really want to cultivate really with Young Enterprise and the young people that take part in the programs is having that enterprising mindset. So if you think about COVID-19, we had young people who were taking part in the programs throughout lockdown, and they still found ways of putting their presentations together, to engage in the competition, to talk to judges. And that for me gives me huge amount of optimism for the future. Because what basically, it's not just about skills, it's about how you apply those skills. So how you adapt to a changing situation, how you take on board feedback, how you look for opportunities to get people to help you develop your product. It's about a mindset.
Yeah, and actually your comment about recognizing the opportunities and also recognizing qualities in other human beings that they might not see themselves. It's a really, I guess you're in effect, you're helping the young people, identify opportunities, but also you're giving them an opportunity to demonstrate where their skill sets might be. And it's a really interesting, it's a very valuable, very valuable lesson for these folks. Very rewarding too. It must be very rewarding for you.
It is. And if you think about the current education system, teachers are doing a phenomenal job right now. We are hugely grateful for the partnership. The system is very much focused on the individual, and the system is very much a knowledge-based system. So we need opportunities for collaborative learning. We need project-based learning, because that will bring out qualities that you've just described there, James, in young people that they won't have opportunities to demonstrate, in other ways. And just like me, just like thousands of others, there will be young people that think, do you know what, learning doesn't really work for me. But actually, it's not learning. It's just the way of applying some of that learning, and also the support that's around them. I mean, I would say is one of the things we want to is the lack of personal networks as a barrier to young people actually getting on. So you might be in a family where you don't talk about pay slips, you don't talk about have opportunities to talk about skills or what a great CV looks like. So where are those young people going to get that support from? So what we try to do is address that lack of personal networks by having mentors, having volunteers from the world of work who will help young people to widen that network. So we're almost a little bit like that network that we can help them get on, so that they can sit in front of you as an employer, talk about young enterprise as their experience, and not feel that they're kind of held back by their personal circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's brilliant. I mean, you're giving these individuals kind of insights into the world of work. You're giving them an idea of the different elements that make up a business. I mean, you've got a huge kind of support network with Young Enterprise, the Alumni Network. And actually, that was a huge lesson that I learned from Young Enterprise. And actually, my business journey is the importance of building and having that support network around you, being able to kind of reach out to people for support and guidance and help when you need it. So you mentioned earlier about COVID and how you are having to adapt. So I'd be interested to actually understand kind of how you and your team have adapted to this time. Obviously, there's jobs at risk, people being put on furlough, we're now coming out the other side. So how have you kept your team and company morale going?
We are extremely fortunate in the organisation that we are building what I feel is a really great culture. Culture is really important in times of any time, but particularly in times of crisis, because there's a couple of things that you really need to do as a leader. You need to, you can never over communicate. You can never ever over communicate. You need to provide opportunities for people to ask questions, provide opportunities to kind of raise concerns or anything that they're worried about. I'd say that you also need to create a sense of direction. So throughout this, we've got a heavy headwind, which is COVID-19, and there's lots of negative news that's happening around us. As an organisation, if you're leading an organisation, you need to work with your senior team to create that sense of optimism, purpose, and direction. So you've got a plan, you work up that plan, and you get people excited about that plan, or give them the opportunities to road test that plan, so that you can't make them get excited. People, and also be brave in terms of communication. Don't tell people what they want to hear. Tell them the truth. My experience is I've never ever gone wrong in telling the truth, because people respect it. They might not always like it, but they respect it, and they know if you're trying to be as transparent as possible, that you're trying to create a culture. For me, that my senior team will laugh at this when they hear it, but for me, the culture that I really feel is important to develop is a culture where people feel I belong and I matter. And if you hold that as your front of, if you hold that as your North Star and you make your decisions, even if you've got to make difficult decisions, whether or not, hypothetically, it's about having to make redundancies, we're not in that situation. But, if you did, if you can make those decisions with that kind of I belong and I matter kind of ethos, the way that you do that will be in a way that is as kind as possible, as supportive as possible, that you're helping people find those next steps, even if you are in a situation where you're having to let people go. And I think that those things are really, really, really key, because people will always remember how you treated them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, the truth hurts sometimes too. And what I have 3 daughters, and what I tell them is, be their authentic selves, and it's not always easy, because we've all, certainly speaking from my experience, put on facades, try to be someone I haven't been, even in the professional working world, and then you realize that actually, if you just be yourself, and you mentioned bravery, if you can just have that, develop that courage, be brave to be yourself, because we're all, very unique individuals. The probability that we were even born was, what was the probability we talked about? It's like something trillion to 1 or something. I don't know. The fact that we're even alive. So that those raw qualities that each and every one of us have. But I guess my point. So just being yourself, and being truthful. You're going to build trust and get things done quicker at a better quality, because once you get that trust, everyone, you just get more done, don't you?
It's a really, really good point you make about authenticity there, James, because and I think that sometimes it takes a bit of time to be able to, kind of feel comfortable in your own skin to be able to do that, because there's so many other kind of factors that are around you, and so many influences that are around you. I mean, obviously the role of the influencer is still very, very strong in young people's lives, and the ability to be authentic and walk your own road. I think the more we can support young people to say that, it's about your journey, and what success means is up to you. Don't let anybody else define what success means. For you, it might be that, I don't know, you've got a job that means you can spend more time with your family, so therefore it's a kind of local job, or whatever success, let you be the definition. And the one thing I would say is, don't let anybody else define you. So, to your point about authenticity, that's spot on.
That's a really good message. And I guess as well, when you're talking, you work with young people for a lot of your career, these individuals are still growing, they're still developing their personalities. So, and they're going to make mistakes, and actually failing is okay. There was one family that I came into contact recently, and they were, they celebrate every mealtime, they celebrated their failures. The father would ask the children, how many times have they failed that day, and they use it as a subject to celebrate. Because as long as you don't keep doing the same thing again, getting the same results, as Einstein says. Can you talk a bit about failure?
Yeah,
what's your interpretation of that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, the whole thing around innovation is linked to things not working and you doing things differently the next time. We wouldn't have innovation if you didn't have things that went wrong or things that didn't go to plan. So for me, failure is a really neutral word. It doesn't have the the negative connotations that quite a lot of Western society apply to the word. I mean, if you go to some parts of the world, failure is celebrated because it's part and parcel of developing yourself. It's part and parcel of developing your business. Unfortunately, we live in a society where you would fail your exams, you fail your driving test. And they're big things that actually kind of make you feel quite nervous or scared about failing things. One of the things that we really encourage in Young Enterprise is about kind of reflecting on your learning and using failure as an opportunity to do things differently next time. So can absolutely agree on the importance of failure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I learned when I took part in the enterprise. And it's about that failure. It's about not giving up when you do fail. And obviously at a young age in secondary school, that's a really good lesson to learn, because as you go through secondary school into college, into a career, you do fail. You have, like you said, the driving lessons that maybe you don't pass first time. And it's about that not giving up mentality. Okay, so on a different subject, I read in the paper the other day sorry, not the paper, I read in a article the other day that you said that being the CEO of Young Enterprise was the best job in the world. Why?
We've got an amazingly talented generation of young people that, we get to provide opportunities to connect that talent with like I said, with opportunities. So I've got an amazing team of people who are really committed to what we do. We're really clear about what we want to do. We've got really good partners and supporters that back us. And I feel now more than ever, coming out of COVID, that what we do has more relevance. So, young people have got a massive part to play in the economic recovery of the UK. We need to make sure that we bring them into the room in the conversations when we're talking about skilling up, about mindset for recovery, all of those things. And I think that's why I think it's the best job in the world, because you get to connect talent with opportunity.
Could you tell the audience a little bit more about the £5 and £10 challenge? That sounds really
sure. So the £5 and £10 challenge, they're a £5 and £10 challenge. They are a bit like you say on the tin, that you basically would give a young person a £5 if they're in primary school, a £10 if they're in secondary school, and they have a month in which to make as much difference as they can, whether that be profit or whether that be impact in their community. Within a month, they set up and run. They only have that £5, or they only £10 who use as seed capital for their enterprise, and then they would, at the end of the month, return the £5. They get to keep the profits, and they get to obviously share their journey with us. But we've had some phenomenal it's a really great introduction to entrepreneurship. I mean, it's less about the product; it's more about what people go on to do, really. So we've got, obviously great alumni who have got great stories to tell. Obviously, Harry's one of them. Steph McGovern is another alumni who talks really passionately about the role that Young Enterprise had in enabling her to be different or show difference, show something a little bit different. And she's very clear that Young Enterprise had a big impact on her then getting the role on the telly. We've got other people, the likes of Sarah John, who's the chief cashier of the Bank of England. And it's her signature, I think, on the new £20 notes. And she was the finance director in her Young Enterprise company. She said that gave her their first experience of being a finance director at the age of 15, 16. So there's some really great examples there where people might not go on to set up their own business, but it's that mindset that it creates. So I think that is quite unique.
Yeah, and that mindset can rub off on their peers that may not even be part of Young Enterprise, but that, like you talked about the culture of Young Enterprise, and that mindset piece. I think that's really, really important. How you tackle challenges. We actually interviewed Hassan Rashid a couple of weeks ago, and he came to England as a refugee at age 11, not speaking any English, and he was fortunate to have really good emotional support from his family, and he's basically nothing will get in his way, and he's still going to this day and doing some amazing things. But again, it's this, how do you develop this winning mindset? Celebrating your failures, being happy in your own skin. Reach out to people, be kind, all the things that you mentioned, listen. These are really good, these are really great things to share. And it's really interesting talking about it.
I do think that that resilience plays a key part in some of this. I mean, I think sometimes those early formative life experiences as a young person where you're thinking, gosh, there's lots going wrong here. I think that ability to build resilience, the ability to learn from when things go wrong, the ability to kind of bounce forward after something's not gone to plan, is really key to some of those things that you've just talked about. But again, it goes back to those personal networks. If you've got nobody around you that then says, do you know what, I know that didn't work, but what would you do differently next time? And that's the great thing about Young Enterprise. We've got phenomenal volunteers, likes of who would sit and support Harry, just to tease out what they would do differently next time. And I think we've all got roles. If we're going to come out of this as a community in the UK differently, we've got to learn that what we were doing before COVID wasn't actually very healthy for anybody. So that whole thing about kindness, about the ability to support people, help people build their networks, introduce people if they're not, perhaps don't know somebody that might help them. It all kind of creates a culture where you feel okay to ask for help if you need it, but you also get a great buzz from helping if you can. So I think, we've got an opportunity to reset our culture as a country right now, and I just think we're at a critical moment where we could do things differently. But it is a critical moment because things will start to very soon go back to normal, and I think we've got a real chance to not let that happen, but to really do things differently.
So do you think things will go back to normal?
I think there's a potential worry that people might just want to go back to normal, but I also think, for me, the things that I've learned about relationships, about the importance of other things coming to the fore about what success. I think things like lockdown has given people an opportunity to really reflect on what success or what happiness, what's important to them. That enforced period has given people a really big chance to think about things differently, about their own lives. My hope is that people don't get quickly back into the swing of things and they forget those things that were really important to them. So my hope is that it doesn't go back to normal. Certainly the Young Enterprise won't be doing that. As an organisation, we feel very strongly there are things that we can do differently to support young people, because they are at disproportionate risk of coming out of this situation worse than anybody, particularly those that those young people who are in perhaps disadvantaged situations, because they'll have had 6 months less of schooling, they won't have had that structured learning, and they need that support. So we do need to think about things differently in order to help them.
I mean, these students are so used to kind of seeing their friends each day, being in the environment where they can socialise and actually learn these valuable skills that they're going to need in their later life. So this actually leads me on to my next question, which is around mental health, but specifically mental health in younger generations, which is becoming more and more common. Please, could you share maybe some of your experiences and how you actually, with Young Enterprise, support these young students with these challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, but even before COVID-19, kind of screen time was a growing worry for everybody, wasn't it? The amount of screen time everybody was kind of exposed to, whether or not it's kind of on social media or binge watching Netflix or whatever it is. But I think it's about how you create those support networks, and how do you model that it's all right to ask for help. Again, it goes back to culture, making those, and making people available that people would feel okay to reach out to. So a young person aged, 15, 16 may not feel that I'm the right person, but there will be perhaps other young people. So how do you mobilize that peer-to-peer or near-to-peer network so that, people do feel, I think the role of influencers is huge here in terms of providing support for young people to feel okay to say, actually, I need a bit of help here. I mean, my own experience of mental health is really that sometimes you need to know when you need to take a break, and I think sometimes, particularly when you lead in a charity or you've kind of got in a situation, you go for long periods trying to find a way out of things that you kind of get a bit tunnel vision. So knowing when you just actually are becoming inefficient because you use you haven't really got, you're kind of empty in the tank, and that's a bad time to make decisions. There's a really great saying which is like, never make a decision when you're in the emotional basement. And I find that so true. I find that really, really true, that never make a strategic or decision if you're feeling really, really low, because you're going to make a decision based on your own feelings rather than the facts that are out there. So I've learned that. It's a big one that's really helped me.
Okay, well, I've actually got another question that I've been meaning to ask. And when I was thinking about before this episode, I thought, because obviously you put these amazing events on, these amazing Company of the Year, where you go to London, and then I think the finalists then go to France. I can't remember.
We did last year. It's going to be held by Junior Achievement Portugal this year.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Oh, very nice. Well, those opportunities. So I wanted to think, if you had an unlimited budget for Young Enterprise, or is there a dream project that you do, and what would it be, and who maybe would be involved? You could tell us maybe what that vision would be for you.
I'm going to be boring and just say, for me, it would be that every young person gets that opportunity to develop those critical skills in which to learn to earn and look after their money and develop an enterprising mindset. Because for me, it isn't about an amazing, sexy event. For me, it's about consistency of opportunity wherever you live, whether you live in Truro or Bridlington or, wherever it is. It's because otherwise, without those opportunities, you will never know whether or not you could have connected the next Richard Branson or whoever it's probably a bad example, but that opportunity could create a massive difference to that young person's life.
So there's benefits side and the accessibility, accessible for everyone that wants it.
That's absolutely right, James. Yeah.
And actually, and on the accessibility subject, so how would a business owner or entrepreneur access some of the talent that might be coming up through the ranks, that might have been through the program? Just speaking from my experience working at Flexi, we're a FinTech e-commerce business. We've been bootstrapping for 18 months now.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of an investment capital raise, but obviously, if we could get some great talented people with the right mindset, then we could do amazing things. So is there a program set up with Young Enterprise that folks like myself could engage in some of your alumni?
Yeah, I mean, what one of the things that we're really keen to do is to engage people very early on in terms of when they're in the program. So to give you an example of Harry, so what we would be looking for are potential funders, potential volunteers that would be helping them at that stage. So in addition to you volunteering or perhaps supporting programs, you get to see a shop window of talent, and you work with that shop window, not in an hour interview, but actually you'll see them over a course of a year, or the period of time that the young person's working on the program. So for us, it's about that early investment and about that partnership. Yes, there are opportunities which we would obviously make available if for instance there was an apprenticeship or something that was available that we would then share with our alumni. But for me, if you can get involved earlier, that helps the charity to bring those opportunities to more young people, but also gets you closer to working with those young people directly early on.
Okay. So volunteering and corporate sponsorship, and the volunteering could be mentorship, or you're just helping these young people get to the next level, or be involved with some of the programs.
Definitely, and given where we are right now, that volunteering could be virtual. It could be mentoring, via Zoom. It could be providing talking heads in terms of like a 5-minute input on the role of a finance director, or the things that you've learned, James, with your businesses. What are the 3 top tips that you would give a young entrepreneur? It's that kind of content. It doesn't have to be physically you traveling to a school. Oh, it would be great. I mean, that might still be the case. But what we're assuming actually is there might be more virtual volunteering opportunities going forward because of the situation we're in.
So Sharon, I wanted to touch on the Alumni Network. And actually, how important is it that you get these alumni, these advocates of Young Enterprise involved, and to talk to these students that are currently going through the process about their experiences when they did it when they were younger? So you've got these, 20, 30, 40-year-olds that are now in their careers and that took part in the scheme when they were younger, and to actually share with these students how it really benefited them, the lessons that they learned from taking part in the scheme. So really, how important is this?
It's more and more important, to be honest with you, Harry, more and more important. And really, just in terms of the diversity of the communities that we serve, what we really want to do is to engage more alumni so that they, like you say, they're not particularly interested in what I've got to say. I didn't do Young Enterprise when I was in school, but actually just talking to someone that then is able to say, well, this is what I did, this is how it's helped me. Not necessarily everybody will create a business, but everybody will be able to say how their story has been impacted by their experience. And we find the alumni really, really important, both the younger alumni, like people like yourselves, and younger, in terms of providing local support, but also as people progress through their careers, they're also been able to showcase the long-term difference of Young Enterprise. So that really critical that and we've actually invested in a post now, which is an alumni officer. So we've actually invested in a resource which will really focus on recruiting and supporting our alumni and looking at ways that we can give back to them.
No, I was just thinking there's actually a book called Rocket Fuel that it talks about integrators and visionaries and matching them together. And you mentioned about connecting these young people with a network that can help help them grow, like an ecosystem of support. But it's I'm sure there's a bit of that going on. Do you ever connect like the visionary, the ideas man with the with more of the operational execution style, it's more structured individual? Because that seems to, a lot of really successful businesses have those two components. And quite often as entrepreneurs, we've got to do everything ourselves. But then it gets to a point where if you want to scale, you really need to find people that get lit up by a spreadsheet. I mean, I personally don't get lit up by spreadsheets, but I know people that do. And I know people that love solving technical problems. It takes a lot of energy for me to do it. But yeah, so it's just, do you connect your alumni like that as well?
Not really. We're at the start of the alumni journey, so we've kind of got early alumni where we're looking to provide. So we do quite a lot around webinars, around kind of starting your business, looking at resilience, looking at kind of mindsets, all of those things, and we're trying to connect people to each other, alumni network to each other. So yeah, it's certainly something that we should perhaps think about going forward.
Okay, I'm gonna get you that book.
Okay.
So you'll have to give me your address. I'll do that when we jump off the call.
Thank you. Thank you. That'd be really good. Rocket Fuel, you say?
Rocket Fuel. Yeah, you'll get it. You'll get it in the next few days.
I wanted to actually talk to you about kind of what the future holds for Young Enterprise. What is your vision for Young Enterprise, and where do you want to take it?
I mean, I think that, as I said before, Young Enterprise has got a really critical role to play in bringing young people to the table around the economic recovery of the UK post-COVID. Lots and lots of data out there to say that we're going to go through a significant recession. Very often young people are at the brunt of that, whether or not they can't get that first step into work, or whether or not they can get that first experience of the world of work to then present to a potential employer. So for me, the vision is, again, that we provide those opportunities, that we engage young people in developing that enterprising mindset. And I also think that Young Enterprise has got a great role to play in supporting and working with employers who then provide volunteers, because I think that enterprising mindset is just as valuable in being developed in the current workforce. So you could have somebody working with you that feels it's all about the skill, where absolutely right now, in terms of the situation that we're going to go into post-COVID recovery, it's all about the mindset. It's all about here. You win and lose here. So whether or not it's kind of how you look at an opportunity, it's about the resilience to kind of keep trying if things don't work, but keep trying things differently, not the same thing. And I think there's lots that we can do to support and help employers through the power of volunteering with Young Enterprise develop that enterprising mindset.
Actually, I've got a little comment on that. So I picked up something this week which I will share. So this one individual, I don't know whose quote it is, so for anyone out there in the world that actually came up with this, then I liked it. So it was saying that we're in control of three things. We're in control of our thoughts, we're in control of what we picture in our minds, and we're in control of the action that we take. So if you apply that to life, it's really true, and it comes down to this mindset. So if you know, or if you believe you have control of what you think, you believe in what you want for yourself, and then you just take action to work towards those goals, or those desired outcomes. I prefer to talk about goals as desired outcomes. It's a process, isn't it? Because you don't want to set yourself up for failure. But this enterprising mindset is really, really key, and I think the COVID situation, major challenge, but there's also the mental health challenges that we touched upon. I think young people are more susceptible to that because they're still growing, and they're not able to connect with these individuals that might be able to make a difference to them. And we live in a cyber world, and we're not having that human contact. So it's been a great time for reflection, but it's just, how do you get the message out that I guess you have a choice how to live your life.
But it's also going back to what you said earlier and your point about working with these employers. And actually, because you work so closely with these students, Gen Z, iGen, you actually learn how they work, which then allows you to then help these employers to adapt and accommodate with this young kind of talent that's coming into their business. I mean, looking at kind of security, stability, opportunity, kind of attention span, each generation just works differently.
No, you're absolutely right, because there's like probably 4 generations in the workforce right now, and all have got to find a way of working with each other's kind of I guess kind of habits and the kind of ways they like to kind of work, and we've got to find that intergenerational click has got to work. So things like volunteering, things like kind of learning about how Gen Z work, and just in terms of Gen Z, I think we very often give them a hard time. I've got 2 at home here that incredibly resilient. James is was in year 11. One minute he was kind of revising for his GCSEs. Next minute he was told not to come back to school again. Incredibly resilient. And for me, there's a lot of work to do for people to understand, how best we can bring out that talent. Okay,
so one question we do like to ask is, if we could arrange a coffee for you with anybody, who would you choose and why?
For me, it's got to be Barack Obama. It's got to every day of the week. He has there's one kind of phrase that he talks about, and he talks about using the energy of opposing forces and doing something with it. And for me, that's just something that I try and live with, using the energy of opposing forces to do something creative with it. And he talks about kind of the importance of supporting young people, about helping them create a resourcefulness and a resilience that might not fully insulate them from adversity or hardship, but it gives them a sense of their own possibility. And for me, that's something I live by. I find him incredibly inspiring. He, again, is his own authentic self. And he's managed to maintain that throughout, incredible challenges. So it would be him.
Actually, I've got one last question, actually. So if you could leave one piece of advice for our audience, what would that be?
It would be underestimate the role of mindset in your path at your peril. Yes, focus on skills, but do not underestimate the power of mindset in terms of setting your direction and being able to achieve your goals.
Wow.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Excellent piece of advice.
Yep. Great. And I guess one final thing, where do people find you on social media? Where can they follow the Young Enterprise journey? Is there anything you could quickly share?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've got my own Twitter account, which you can obviously follow. So that's S Davis. So S Davis 1971. We've got Young Enterprise, which is www.y-enterprise.org. Obviously, we've got Young Enterprise on Twitter and LinkedIn. And it would be great. It's about a movement. Young Enterprise only happen if people get involved. So, to have great relationships. It's about teachers. It's about volunteers, supporters, alumni, just getting together to support just a great generation of young people. Great. Well, I think we're going to have to wrap up now. But thank you so much for coming to the Rocket Pod today.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. Really nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure. It's lovely to talk to you.
Thank you all for listening to today's episode of Rocket Pod. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as we did. So join us next week as we sit down with Jack Edwards, social media influencer and author that has grown his YouTube following to over 275,000 subscribers by the age of only 22. Thank you as always to our awesome sponsor Flexi, who is the mecca for all your subscriptions. Download it from the App Store today or check out their website at flexiapp.uk. That's FLEXY app.uk. Of course, check us out on social media and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thank you as always, and we'll see you next week.